The Bucks have won 24 out of their last 28 games. They have the best record in the NBA. They are in pole position for the number one seed for the entirety of the postseason. But is there any concern about Jrue Holiday? I'm going to dive into the recent numbers with Jrue. I'm going to take a bigger picture look on both ends of the floor, particularly when it comes to the fourth quarter. And of course, I'm going to get you ready for a game against the Detroit Pistons. Like every game right now, it is a must-win for the Bucks. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. As always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single day, whether it's on YouTube. Perhaps you like the old school audio platform. That's typically how I listen to my podcast, and I definitely don't want to be looking at my own damn head on the YouTube screen, but we thank everyone that does. And I've been on a big subscription push for the YouTube stuff because this is definitely the growth of the podcast. It's been going through the roof, and I love it. I feel a little embarrassed how many of you people want to actually watch me on a daily basis, but it is great for us. So if you can subscribe right now, we're trying to get to 7K by the start of the postseason. We're at around 6.4K, so we're still a fair way off, but we're trying to get to 7K. Also, drop a comment, a like, a review on your audio platform because it's free to do, but it really helps us and boosts us up in the ratings and the rankings and puts the video and the podcast in front of more people, which ultimately makes this fun for everyone because then we get to discuss the Bucks with more and more people. Now, it's been pretty good days if you're a Bucks fan in recent weeks, but there is nothing that gets the juices flowing like a loss. And forget the fact that it was on a back-to-back and forget the fact that it was against the top team in the West. There is some people that want to get mad about what they saw in this Denver Nuggets game. There's some other people that are a little more relaxed, but they want to get mad at the people that are getting mad about the loss. So the YouTube stuff was going off last night. I put the podcast up, and within about an hour, we had about 100 comments on YouTube. So it was awesome, and it's a lot of fun. And I straight up told people, I disagree with you, but that's totally okay. And there's other people out there that think I'm an idiot for some of my opinions about this Bucks team, but that is the fun thing about this podcast. So look, no matter how you feel about this Bucks team right now, I'm going to break down some of the stuff from a purely data perspective, and then you can tell me how you feel about it right now. So I want to get into a heap of Jrue Holiday stuff tonight because I think it is absolutely fascinating and definitely a talking point for this team. But first up, as we've been doing for a long time now, we're looking at the standings. We're looking at where these teams sit. We mentioned late on the podcast yesterday, if you missed the post game from Denver, make sure you go and check it out. We broke down that game there, so we're moving on today. But late in that podcast, we said, okay, the Phoenix Suns are beating the Philadelphia 76ers. This is going to be good for the Bucks and might, almost barring an absolute collapse from the Bucks, mean that Milwaukee are probably going to be a top 2 seed. So right now, Philadelphia 4 games back, and they've only got 8 games to play. So, yeah, it would be a disaster if Philadelphia can get in this mix, even though the Bucks do play the Sixers still on the road to the postseason. But they're only a game and a half ahead of the Boston Celtics right now. So that's why this game against the Detroit Pistons, hey, you just can't afford to let anything slip. We know the Bucks did lose one to the Pacers last week. As I mentioned, they've won 24 out of 28. So there was always going to be a frustrating loss on the road to the playoffs. I'm hoping that one against the Pacers was the only one we have to deal with. They will get a chance at revenge against Indiana later this week, but this game against Detroit, you just got to go out and get it. The injury report, as it currently stands as I record this podcast at around midnight Central Time. Well, we've just crossed over midnight, actually, so it's officially game day in Milwaukee, in Detroit. The injury report, Giannis is probable with right knee soreness. Jay Crowder also probable, which is a decent sign. We haven't seen him play for a little bit with that calf stuff he's got going on. Goran Dragic probable. Now, this will be interesting. We still haven't seen Goran Dragic play a minute. I would like to see him play a couple of minutes and see what we got. We know the Bucks were going to take it slow. I haven't really been concerned about Jay Crowder or Goran Dragic because we know that the Bucks, call it ramp up, call it protecting their older players and they're valuable players, whatever you want to call it. I just haven't been too concerned with his J stuff, but it would be fun to see him get a couple of games in before the postseason. And Myers Leonard is out. For the Pistons, and this is why the Bucks just can't afford to let this slip. Bogdanovic is out and Alec Burks is out. Obviously, Cade Cunningham's been out for the majority of the season. So, Burks and Bogdanovic, the two guys that, we had a lot of discussions about leading into the trade deadline. Could the Bucks get involved in that stuff? It obviously didn't happen. And the Pistons, this is just a terrible team right now. They're not really trying to win. They're looking ahead. The draft stuff is obviously there for them. They have won one game since February 11th. When I looked this up, I nearly fell off my chair. One game since February 11th for the Detroit Pistons. So, look, even if the Bucks want to go down the path of Giannis not playing in this game, they've got a back-to-back coming up later this week. I don't know. Look, let's face it. Even without Giannis, this should be a game that the Bucks absolutely handle. They should beat the Pistons. It's interesting that Giannis is listed with the knee stuff. We've seen him listed with the hand/wrist in recent weeks as well. We know there was that incident with Christian Brown with the Denver Nuggets in the game yesterday, and he kind of raked at the hand. Giannis is dealing with this hand injury. I don't know what's going to happen in the offseason with Giannis, but we are at the point where I don't know whether a night off necessarily helps the hand outside of it prevents you, obviously, from having one of these incidents that we've seen a fair bit of late. But he's clearly playing through pain. It's going to be fascinating when it gets to the end of the season what happens if there is a surgical path they need to go down. Because big picture, our Greek friends know this. I know this because I'm involved with the Australian team emotionally. I want Australia to do well. It's a World Cup year. And late August through September, the FIBA World Cup is on. It's in Japan, Indonesia, and the Philippines as well. So it's across 3 countries there. And it's a massive tournament. Greece is obviously there. I have to assume that Giannis, if he was healthy, would want to play. I assume our Greek friends want Giannis to play for the national team. But again, if the Bucks go on a long playoff run and they're playing basketball, fingers crossed through to June, and he doesn't get in for any type of surgery, if that's what he needs, until mid to late June, it's probably going to impact his chances of playing FIBA World Basketball. That's a long way down the road. But I'm just holding my breath. I'm watching Giannis. I know he's the toughest guy in the NBA, certainly in my opinion, based on what the evidence suggests. But he's playing through some stuff right now. So we'll see what they do with Giannis in this game against the Detroit Pistons. But they're going to take care of business. That is the bottom line here. Regardless of whether Giannis plays, they absolutely need to take care of business and just keep winning games. That 1.5 game gap ahead of the Boston Celtics is not much. And remember, the Bucks and the Celtics are playing each other in a couple of days' time, so they could be effectively even in the standings by the time that game is done. So it means a hell of a lot for the Bucks. And look, if Giannis doesn't play in this game, one of the guys you're going to want to step up is going to be Jrue Holiday. And I'm going to talk a lot about Jrue Holiday and dive into the numbers. And is there a concern for Bucks fans around Jrue Holiday? I'm going to get to that next after I talk about our friends from Prize Picks. And if you aren't aware of what Prize Picks is or how it's done or how you use it, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, baseball, opening week later this week. Shout out to the Brewers. Hockey still rolling on. Golf, college sports, obviously still right at the peak of their season there. So any sport, tennis is there as well. Esports, unbelievable stuff. So entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, they'll give you 50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's Prize Picks, longtime friends of the podcast. All right, Jrue Holiday, an all-star this year, well-deserved all-star bid. And let's face it, we spoke about it. His performances through the back end of December, right through January, absolutely sizzling as scoring output, shooting the ball. He was on absolute fire. Now, what's the biggest change when you just look at the Bucks from a personnel standpoint since then, and also just the role that you play on offense with the ball in your hands? The addition of Khris Middleton, number one, is obviously the big one. But there is also the addition of Joe Ingles. And this is two guys that when they're out on the floor, they're bringing the ball up the floor, they're running the pick and roll, and they are in control of the offense a little bit there. So you've added two guys that have the ball in their hands and could create in the half court. Now, I'm not saying that Jrue Holiday isn't someone that can do that, but I think the evidence suggests that Jrue Holiday, I think, as a scorer, with the ball in his hands is fine. He can use his bulk. He can get to the post. He can score at the rim. Obviously, he's got the step back. He can get to that in the mid-range or from three. He's been a big shot maker for the Bucks. But if you're asking me pure facilitation, who are the guys I want the ball in the hands with? I'd probably put Giannis, Khris, and Joe ahead of Jrue. There will be people that will disagree with that, but let me know in the YouTube comments there. Now, I keep on using January 22nd as the benchmark for when I split the two parts of the season. It's when Khris came back the second time. And as I pointed to a number of times already in this show, the Bucks have won 24 out of 28 since January 22nd when Khris came back. So overall, since January 22nd, Jrue's getting you 18 points a night on 47% shooting and 37% from three. So over the course of this 28-game stretch, the numbers are still pretty nice for Jrue. There's no doubt about that. But over the last 10 games, he's only getting you 12.9 points a game, and those shooting splits have dropped to 42 from the field, 32 from three. And he just hasn't shot the ball all that well. 3 for 11 yesterday against Denver. Not having the impact offensively. Now, I know there was some stuff defensively mentioned on the podcast yesterday. I sort of went back and watched it again. When Jamal Murray was really going crazy towards the back end of the quarter and scored a couple of those threes, Jrue was on the bench for a little bit of that. There was Javon Carter there, and I'm not even blaming Javon Carter. I mean, there is a size difference there, but ultimately, when you have a player like Jamal Murray, he could scorch any team. He's been red hot since the start of the new year. So it's fine, but I can't really pin it all on Jrue there. And I also am just not worried about the defense of Jrue Holiday. But I think it's also worth looking at the overall stuff for the Bucks on offense and where Jrue fits on this team offensively and what the importance is of his role as a scorer or as the primary perimeter defender. And the two things that you need to take into account when you ask, is Jrue in a slump right now? Is there any reason to be worried? The easy answer for me is no on offense, because when I think about how this team is going to have success in the postseason, Jrue might be a guy that you need to hit big shots, and he's done that before in the past, but he's not a guy that I'm looking at and saying, well, if Jrue doesn't get you 25, you're not going to win a playoff game. He isn't that guy. And as I pointed to, he's probably fourth in the pecking order behind Giannis, Khris, and Brook Lopez. And over the last 10 games, you've got 20 points a game from Brook Lopez on really high efficiency from 2-point range. We've discussed Brook Lopez a lot. But you're also getting 20 points from Khris Middleton over the last 10 games on 46% from the field and 40% from three. So I think that this is just this team now balancing out the roles. And sure, you want Jrue to be a little more efficient offensively. That would be great. But I'm not buying into the idea that there's anything to be concerned about Jrue's role. I've seen a number of people on YouTube, and I think this, again, is just part of the anti-Khris agenda, but I've seen people on YouTube suggesting that, Khris Middleton's back, which is a negative for Jrue. Forget about that. If you go back to the 2021 postseason and look at the numbers offensively for Jrue Holiday across the entire playoffs, 23 games, he got you 17.3 points per game. So he had some big moments again and some big games. Notably, when Giannis wasn't playing against Atlanta, surprise, surprise, the role for Jrue Holiday expanded and he stepped up to the plate. He's done this time and time again. But he was 40% from the field and 30% from three. Now, again, he hit some big shots. Game 7 against Brooklyn, couldn't hit a shot all night long, then came up with some big threes, hit a couple of middies in the fourth quarter when the Bucks needed it. So I don't have any problem with Jrue Holiday, even if he's having a tough night, hitting a big shot. Like, I have confidence that he's going to knock it down because he's been proven to be a clutch guy. He's also been proven to be a guy that does not let the previous 3 quarters or the previous 10 minutes of play or whatever it may be get in his head. But you need Jrue Holiday all-out attack on the defensive end. And that's going to be his role in the postseason. He's going to have the biggest defensive assignments. He's going to be absolutely worn out and exhausted from what you're asking him to do on the defensive side of the ball. So the chances are that hopefully the efficiency is a little bit more than what it was in 2021. But the chances are that he is going to be impacted offensively with his shooting, with his legs, than he was similar to what he was in 2021. But I think you feel better about it because I think we've got a better version of Brook Lopez offensively in the way the Bucks are able to use him. And I also think that you got, again, a better and deeper functioning offense, that there will be less responsibility for Jrue Holiday. So, look, there's no doubt about it. It's been a tough couple of games here for Jrue, and the Bucks are now 7-3 over their last 10, which, when the Bucks are on a 16-game winning streak, 7-3 feels like the Bucks are slumping. I just am not that panicked about that. And the other thing with the Denver game, as we touched on with the three-point shooting, the reality is that I'm not going to overreact to that game. Yes, because of the schedule stuff, regardless if people think that's a cheap excuse, it's also just the reality. And the three-point shooting, look, we're all going to enter the postseason and maybe feel uncomfortable about whether the Bucks can knock down those threes based on prior history. But if you shoot 25% from three on the road and Denver shot 41% from three, then you're going to have a hard time winning that game. That is just the absolute reality of it. Since January 22nd, again, here are the three-point numbers for the Bucks players. Javon Carter, 46%. Joe Ingles is at 44. Grayson Allen, 40. Jrue's at 37. Pat even is at 36, and he had a hot game, obviously, the other night. And Bobby Portis is at 35% as well. Interestingly enough, you feel like there's some room for improvement because Brooke and Khris have been down at 34%. Giannis has been at 34%, which is actually a nice little bump up for him. So overall, the Bucks have been shooting the ball really well. It was a down night in Denver. But as far as Jrue Holiday goes, I think now you're just starting to see the roles balance out that I think ultimately will be beneficial for this team and for what you're going to need from Jrue Holiday, which is, in my opinion, absolutely the best perimeter defender in the league. He's going to come up with game-winning plays on that end of the floor, and you've got enough other guys that can score the ball. So there is no chemistry clash. There's no weirdness with Middleton, Joe Ingles, Jrue Holiday, Giannis. The more talent you've got, the better it's going to be for the half-court offense, and I'm going to get into more of the team stuff here in just a little bit. But let me know what you think about Jrue Holiday. You might be more concerned than me, but for now, I think we've seen enough from him to understand that he is going to be a big-time player for this team, and he doesn't necessarily have to knock down his shots. It would be a bonus, but he doesn't have to knock down those shots to win you games of basketball when it matters most. So there's just some background with the Jrue Holiday stuff and what we've seen from him over the course of the season. More team stuff, though, coming up here in just a little bit after I talk about Built March Madness. The bracket is here. I know for a fact that you've got a favorite Built bar or puff, and now is your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for anything that's got the coconut in it. I'm a big coconut fan in my protein bars, chocolate bars, Built bars. So you can go to do this Built March Madness. All you have to do is go to builtmarchmadness.com. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a draw where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, it gets better because one Locked On fan will receive a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered straight to your door. That is something that I want. You got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. They're so amazing. You will simply not believe that they're good for you. They're healthy for you. Low in calories, high in protein. So run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote for every day in March. Hop in and support your pick. All right, so this is kind of a follow-up to the Jrue Holiday conversation that we were having because I think as far as what I'm worried about with this team, defensively, there's just no concerns there. I saw some discussion around from fans, like the Bucks can't close out games. It's not true. They gave up 47 to Philadelphia, which was a bad loss. There's no doubt about that. They had some defensive struggles against Indiana. But I just can't wrap my head around the idea that there would be Bucks fans out there that are concerned about this team's ability to defend against really any team in the fourth quarter of a basketball game. Like that is the sure thing with this team, that they're going to be there. Sometimes guys will make shots, But I've seen games throughout the regular season where the Bucks coast. They're not exactly locked in. They're not fully engaged. And sometimes it takes for the Bucks to get to the fourth quarter in these regular season games that are a little ho-hum, midweek, average teams, and then they lock in and they win the game. They're going to be locked in the postseason, so I'm not concerned about the defense. They've still got the number one ranked defense in the NBA since that January 22nd marker, again, the first net rating. And fifth offense, though, which is what we love to see. Over the season, they're still only 17th. Prior to Khris Middleton coming back, they were 23rd in offense there. But I wanted to dig in and look at the fourth quarter stats, because if there is any concern about the fourth quarter, where would it be? So in that same time frame, again, the Bucks have won 24 out of 28, so you expect the numbers to be pretty decent. The offense has slipped from 5th to 8th. There's under a point per 100 possessions difference there, though. It's pretty bunched up. So basically, it's been the same. The defense has actually dropped to 8, and sometimes a small sample can hurt you there. And clearly, if you're giving up 47 points and 40-plus in another game in the fourth quarter, that's going to impact those numbers. So the 8th-ranked defense, but overall, again, I'm just not worried about that. But the big thing is, offensively, they have a top 5 half-court offense in that stretch. So, again, I said I'm not worried about the defense, but this team's ability to function in the half court, incorporate everyone in the offense, obviously generate open threes and knock them down. That's what I'm a little bit worried about. And in the past, I've had the Bucks get into close games, and I've said, geez, how are they going to get a shot here? Is it just going to be Giannis charging into a crowd? Yeah, you've got the best player in the world, and most of the time he can make it work, but there's a little bit of concern with that. I think we have seen with the half-court offense and its ability to really go through the roof. Again, they're in the bottom third of the league. Now they're in the top 5. I just think that should have you feeling pretty good about having multiple options to score and multiple options to facilitate this offense. The other point is we just haven't seen the best players on this team play together a lot. I couldn't get the cleaning the glass numbers up here just before I recorded this pod, so I've completely ripped these numbers from Frank Madden. A tweet that he had a couple of days ago, so it probably isn't incorporating the Denver game, so there might be some movement here with these numbers. But Giannis, with Jrue, Khris, and Brooks so far this season, 240 possessions, the offensive rating is 139. So, yep, pretty good. And again, the Bucks have been shooting well in that stretch, so that does impact those numbers. Giannis just with Khris and Jrue, a 131 offensive rating this season over 413 possessions. So all that tells you is that when we're watching regular season basketball, there's always going to be little things that happen in the game that can piss you off. I saw people say that the Bucks were unable to hold their composure last night. The offense wasn't good. They weren't shooting the threes. Khris Middleton was isolating too much. Look, over the course of the regular season, there is different things with different games, whether it's schedule stuff, whether it's guys that have missed games. But ultimately, you have to go back and lean on what you know works. And both from what we've seen in prior history, in addition to what the numbers suggest, the Bucks are in a really good place. And their best players, when they're on the floor together, are able to be elite defensively. And the offense has been ticking upwards all season long. And those numbers tell you that these guys are really, really damn good. So, look, overall, as I said from the start, it's not for me to tell people how to feel about this Bucks team. And if you are someone that is panicking and thinking that there's real problems with this team, then go ahead and let me know what the concerns are in the YouTube comments. But for me, anytime you go on a stretch of 24-4 and the defense is the best in the league and you've also got a top 5 offense, it's just hard for me to get too worked up about what I'm seeing on the floor. And if you didn't have Khris Middleton out there, yeah, I'd be panicking about Jrue Holiday right now. But the fact that Khris is back, the fact that Brook is playing as well offensively as he ever has in Milwaukee, I'm just not worried. I think this team's got the pieces. I think this team's got the depth. And I think this team has the talent overall to go on a deep playoff run. That doesn't guarantee you anything. But there is just nothing really that I'm seeing about this team that is ringing alarm bells in my head. They're going to come up against awesome teams in the postseason. Let's see. Strap yourselves in, because I think this is going to be a seriously fun postseason run. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be anxiety-inducing. But the good news is that's why you've got Locked On Bucks to jump in the comments and let us know how you're feeling and vent. I told people yesterday, I disagreed with some of the comments that were coming through, but I said, this is a safe space. You want to go crazy in the YouTube comments? go and do that. That's what we love to see. So make sure you do that after today's pod. Give me your thoughts on the team overall, this game against Detroit today, and of course, Jrue Holiday as well. And then go check out the Locked On Game to Game podcast. You get your news, stats, info, analysis from across the NBA daily with input from the Locked On experts from around the NBA. So that's Locked On Game to Game on your Locked On NBA feed. This has been Locked On Bucks. Drop a comment, a like, a review, and definitely subscribe, particularly on YouTube. I'm putting the call out. I'm putting the pressure on. We want to get to 7K subscribers. But for now, we're going to leave it there. And we'll be back after the game against the Pistons, hopefully with another win in the bank.